My new landlord asked, "You know what happened to the last tenant in this apartment, right?" I just signed the lease and taken the keys when Mr. Kowalski dropped this question on me. He was an older guy with thick glasses who'd seemed perfectly normal during the apartment tour. Now his expression had changed to something darker. I told him the rental agent said the previous tenant just moved out suddenly for work. He laughed bitterly. Work? That's what they're calling it? He pulled out his phone and showed me a news article from 3 months ago. The headline read, "Local man found dead in apartment after reporting break-ins." The photo showed a guy about my age, David Park, standing in front of this building. He'd lived in 4B, my new apartment, for 6 months before being found dead in his bathroom. The death was ruled suspicious. My stomach dropped as I scrolled through the article. David had filed multiple police reports about someone breaking in, stealing small items, leaving threatening notes. The police hadn't taken it seriously because nothing valuable was taken. The last text he sent was to his brother. "Someone's in the apartment again." Mr. Kowalski watched me read, then said, "David wasn't the first." The tenant before him, a programmer named Alex, fled after 3 months when he woke up to find someone standing over his bed. Before Alex, there was James, who broke his lease after finding cameras hidden in the air vents. All young men living alone, all reported similar experiences before leaving or worse. I asked why he was telling me this now, after I'd signed everything. He said he'd tried warning me during the tour, but the rental agent kept cutting him off. He handed me a folder, copies of police reports, news articles, even forum posts from previous tenants documenting incidents. The first document was Alex's police report from 8 months ago. He'd come home to find his laptop logged in with searches he didn't make about poisoning methods. Another time, his prescription medications were replaced with identical-looking pills that made him sick. James's report described finding his door unlocked repeatedly and his food contaminated with something that caused severe stomach problems. David's reports got progressively worse. Dead rats in his bed, photos of him sleeping taped to his mirror, his missing spare key used to enter while he was home. The final report was filed 2 days before his death. He'd recorded audio of someone in his apartment whispering his name at 3 a.m. I looked around the apartment with new eyes. The fresh paint suddenly felt like a cover-up. Mr. Kowalski pointed to the bathroom where David was found and mentioned the lock had been broken from the inside. The police never explained how someone could lock themselves in from outside the room. My hands shook as I asked if they caught who did this. Mr. Kowalski shook his head. The police investigated David's ex-roommate from college who'd had a fight with him, but he was in another state. Security footage always glitched during incidents. The property management company refused to acknowledge any pattern. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep there. I sat in my car researching David Park. His LinkedIn was still active. His last post about being excited for a new project he'd never complete. His brother had commented asking people to share any information about David's final days. I found a Reddit thread started by Alex, describing experiences that weren't in the police reports. Waking up with injection marks, losing hours of time, finding his journal filled with entries in his handwriting that he didn't remember writing. Other users called him paranoid, but Alex insisted someone was drugging him. Around 2 a.m., I noticed my apartment lights were on. I knew I'd turned everything off and locked up. My blood went cold. I called 911 and reported a break-in. While waiting for police, I watched a shadow move past the window. 2 officers arrived quickly. They searched the apartment and found it empty, but the bedroom window was unlocked from inside. They'd been here before. They remembered David's calls. One officer quietly suggested I find somewhere else to live immediately. I spent the night in a hotel researching tenant rights. At 7 a.m., Mr. Kowalski called. He'd reviewed security footage from last night. A man in a delivery uniform had entered using what looked like a copy of my key, but the company had no deliveries scheduled. The man's face was obscured, but his build matched someone seen entering David's apartment the night he died. He sent me the video. The man moved with confidence, like he'd been there many times. He went straight to 4B, spent 40 minutes inside, then left through the emergency exit. Mr. Kowalski said he'd seen similar footage from David's time. Same person, different disguises. I never spent another night in that apartment. Lost my deposit and first month's rent, but didn't care. A week later, I saw a news update. They'd arrested a former building maintenance worker who'd kept copies of master keys. They found a room in his house with photos of every male tenant from 4B over 3 years, including surveillance shots of me from the day I toured the apartment. The police discovered David had been slowly poisoned over weeks with antifreeze in his food before the final confrontation. The man had been obsessed with young men who lived alone, studying them, tormenting them, and in David's case, killing him when he fought back. They linked him to 2 other deaths in different cities. Mr. Kowalski called after the arrest. The killer had written about me in his journal, noting my routines from just the few times I'd visited the building. He'd already installed cameras in the apartment before I moved in. If I'd stayed even one night, I would have become his next target. Sometimes the only smart choice is to run, even if everyone thinks you're paranoid. David didn't run fast enough.